It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in the small town of Riverside, USA. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the street. People went about their usual routines, some stopping by the local cafe for coffee, others chatting outside the post office, and a few heading into the Riverside Public Health Center for their scheduled appointments. The health center, a modest brick building tucked between a couple of small shops, was a cornerstone of the community. It offered everything from routine checkups to mental health services for those who had served in the military. Many locals, particularly veterans, trusted the center not just for medical care, but for the sense of belonging it provided. Inside, the atmosphere was calm. The reception desk was manned by Rachel, a friendly woman who'd worked at the health center for years. The waiting room was filled with a few people chatting quietly, some flipping through magazines and others simply waiting for their names to be called. The scent of disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of coffee from the break room, creating a peculiar but comforting atmosphere. Among the people waiting was Sam Harris, a man in his early 30s, dressed in a simple pair of jeans and a gray hoodie. His brown hair was cropped short, and his eyes, though soft and kind, carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. He wasn't here for a medical checkup. Sam was a former soldier Army infantry who had recently returned from his last deployment. After years of service, he was now a civilian, but his time in uniform had left an indelible mark on him. He wasn't seeking treatment today, but rather volunteering his time at the center, helping veterans adjust to civilian life. The soft chatter in the waiting room was broken by the unmistakable roar of motorcycles approaching. A group of bikers, clad in leather jackets and patches, rolled into the parking lot in a cloud of exhaust fumes. They weren't from Riverside. Everyone in town knew everyone else, but their arrival was loud, brash, and impossible to ignore. The bikes revved loudly, as if challenging the quiet serenity of the health center itself. Sam glanced out the window briefly, then returned his attention to the papers in front of him. The bikers didn't just park and go inside. They dismounted and began strutting toward the entrance, acting like they owned the place. The leader of the group, a bulky man with a long beard and dark sunglasses, led the pack. The others followed, their rough demeanor and loud laughter filling the air. It wasn't long before they entered the health center, immediately disrupting the calm that had once reigned inside. Rachel, the receptionist, looked up from her desk with a mix of concern and annoyance. She'd seen her fair share of rowdy visitors, but this group was different, too loud, too intimidating. The bikers sauntered up to the counter, their eyes scanning the room with that familiar look of entitlement, as if they were the only ones in the world that mattered. "Hey, sweetheart," the leader of the bikers called out to Rachel, his voice dripping with arrogance. "We're just here to get some service." He looked around, smirking as if daring anyone to challenge him. Rachel, though taken aback, held her ground. "Can I help you?" she asked, trying to remain professional despite the discomfort creeping into her voice. One of the other bikers, a leaner man with tattoos covering his arms, nudged the leader. "You think they got anything to drink here?" "I'm thirsty," he said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. The biker's laughter rang out, but Sam didn't flinch. He had seen much worse in his years of service. He was used to the chaos, the noise, and the sense of entitlement that often came with people who didn't respect boundaries. He knew that sometimes it was best to let things play out, to stay calm, and wait for the right moment. But today wasn't going to be one of those times. As the bikers continued to make crude jokes and disruptive comments, offered them slightly drunk and looking for trouble, walked over to the waiting area. His eyes locked onto Sam, who was sitting quietly in the corner of the room, a book in his lap. "Hey you," the biker called out, his voice loud and condescending. "What's your deal? How you, some kind of tough guy, sitting here like you own the place?" Sam didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on the biker, assessing him. He had been in enough tense situations to know when to speak and when to stay silent, But the biker wasn't finished. He stepped closer, getting right in Sam's personal space. "You got a problem with us." He sneered. The room fell into an uneasy silence. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Unsure of how this situation would escalate, Rachel looked over, her face pale. But she remained behind the desk, unsure whether to intervene or call for security. Sam slowly closed the book in his lap and set it aside. He didn't stand up right away, but his body language changed. His posture straightened, and his hands rested at his sides, ready if needed. "I don't want any trouble," he said in a low, calm voice. "But you need to leave." The biker laughed, clearly not expecting that response. He turned back to his friends, who were watching with interest. "Look at this guy," he said, mocking Sam. "Some soldier, huh? You think you can tell me what to do?" For a brief moment, Sam considered walking away, letting the situation slide. But the biker wasn't done. He took a step closer to Sam, pushing his chest against the soldier's in a show of force. That was all Sam needed. In one fluid motion, he stood up, his hands gripping the biker's shoulders firmly. With surprising speed, he spun the man around, slamming him against the wall with enough force to knock the air out of his lungs. The room was stunned into silence. The bikers froze, unsure of how to react. "Leave," Sam said again, his voice colder this time. "You don't want to test me." The biker, gasping for breath, quickly realized he wasn't dealing with someone who could be intimidated. Sam wasn't some random civilian. He was a trained soldier. And this wasn't his first confrontation. His calm demeanor was backed by years of experience in combat and discipline. He wasn't here to fight, but he wasn't afraid of it either. The leader of the bikers, seeing how quickly the situation had spiraled out of their control, stepped forward. All right, he muttered, holding up a hand to his group. "Let's go. We're done here." One by one, the bikers filed out of the health center, grumbling and muttering under their breath. Sam didn't move from where he stood, his gaze still fixed on the door until it closed behind them. Only then did he relax, his shoulders sagging slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. Rachel slowly approached the desk, her voice shaky. "That was impressive," she said. "Thank you. We've had some rowdy visitors before, but nothing like that." Sam nodded, his expression softening. "It's no problem," he said quietly. "I couldn't let them ruin the peace here." As the bikers' motorcycles roared back to life outside, Sam returned to his seat, picking up his book as if nothing had happened. The room gradually returned to its previous calm, with the other patients quietly going about their business. The moment of tension had passed, but the respect Sam had earned that day lingered in the air. No one would forget the quiet soldier who stood up to the bikers, reminding everyone that strength wasn't always about physical force. It was about knowing when to stand your ground and when to walk away. This story combines action and a human-centered theme, showing how a soldier, despite his past, uses his calmness and strength to handle a potentially dangerous situation, making the message about inner strength and respect resonate strongly.